I am fine. Good to see you.
Subcommittee will come to order. Thank you to all the witnesses for being here today. We're going to take a closer look at the Department of Veterans Affairs' efforts to decrease improper payments for compensation and pension benefits. Congress has appropriated over $150 billion to the VA each year for the past few years. We must ensure that VA is a responsible steward of the taxpayers' investments. This means paying every veteran the correct amount of benefits they have earned the first time. When the VA makes overpayments and they are not returned, taxpayer dollars are obviously wasted. Overpayments can result in VA establishing debts that veterans owe back to the VA, which can obviously create a paperwork nightmare for them and their families. Current law allows VA to either cancel these overpayment debts or waive collection of those debts. From fiscal year 21 to 24, VA has issued at least $5.1 billion in compensation and pension overpayments. VA collected only a portion of those overpayment debts. This means that during the last administration's VA spent $677 million in taxpayer dollars, roughly. For example, VSOs and some of my colleagues in Congress have told me that VA overpaid their constituents for dependents. Those veterans correctly and immediately updated VA that they no longer had a dependent child or spouse. VA did not update the benefit payment, obviously, until months later. As a result, many of those veterans owe VA debt and are dealing with the stress of repaying that underneath the waiver of collection for that debt. If the VA did not make these overpayments in the first place, obviously there would be fewer wasted taxpayer dollars resulting in fewer uncollected overpayments. I look forward to hearing from the VA witnesses today on what the new administration plans to do to fix these bureaucratic headaches and prevent delays in processing dependent status updates. We have to streamline these things in order to take the pressure off of our veterans. There are other causes for VA improper payments of compensation and pensions. For example, the VA Office of Inspector General issued several reports on how inaccurate and effective dates resulted in improper payments during the last administration. The effective date for a grant of a claim determines the amount a veteran will receive in disability compensation back pay. OIG has issued reports, including one in April, that VA incorrectly assigned effective dates when it granted certain types of claims, such as PACT Act claims and claims for total ratings due to unemployability. OIG estimated that those incorrect effective dates resulted in at least $100 million in improper compensation payments. OIG found that the cause was ineffective policy guidance, job aids, and training when it comes to assigning effective dates of awards. I understand that this can be very difficult to determine. I understand that this can be very difficult to determine the effective date of the award. I look forward to hearing from OIG today and how the VA should provide claims processors with effective training and guidance on how to assign correct effective dates for all types of compensation and pension claims. Ultimately, when veterans owe VA a debt at no fault of their own, why should taxpayers have to foot the bill? But we must ensure that VA makes every effort to prevent overpayments from happening in the first place. And I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today on how we can cut down on wasteful spending from improper payments in compensation and pension. And with that, I yield to the ranking member for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your comments, and thank you all for being here today. We have a responsibility to make sure that the VA uses taxpayer money in an efficient and correct way. We also need to guarantee that the VA pays each and every beneficiary what they are due. So today I want to have a genuine conversation on what works and what doesn't. I'm not here to chastise the VA over their supposed fiscal wrongdoing and then leave without ideas for making the VA work better for the veteran. I'm also not here to just defend the status quo, because at the end of the day, everything we do on this committee must be centered around the veteran. It must make things better for the veteran. So we're looking at massive programs here, complicated, imperfect programs. I know we need to work to make them better, and to do that, we're going to have to push for real efficiencies and improvements. We absolutely need to make sure strong payment controls are in place. Now that the VA is pushing out more money than ever, thanks to the PACT Act, we need to make sure that the VA remains a good steward of taxpayer dollars. But we must be precise. If we take an overly punitive and difficult approach to compensation and pension payments, we run the risk of leaving veterans out in the rain without the benefits they have earned. I stress that they've earned. These are the men and women who have put on the uniform for us. They have earned these benefits. So that doesn't mean it's an anything goes policy with no guardrails. But I believe this issue deserves a bit more nuanced consideration than some of the issues we deal with here. I would love to say this is an easy fix, that the over 130,000 PACT Act claims will go through without incorrect effective dates, that every veteran who gets divorced will immediately notify the VA before they incur debts, or that a grieving widow will catch an overpayment during a difficult and confusing time. But that's not the case. It's not reality. As I said, these are large, complex systems, and not only are they run by humans, they're used by humans. That means there will be errors. And even with the best possible software, there's going to be some mistakes. Our goal, and I believe it's the VA's goal as well, is to work hard to fully minimize any of those errors or mistakes, get the veterans what they need, and be strong stewards of taxpayer money. I think we're all rowing the boat in that direction. I don't suspect misconduct and incompetence around every corner. So I hope that today we can have a discussion with that nuance. I also want to ensure that as we work to help the VA reduce the errors in their payment systems, we are equally concerned about what these errors mean to the beneficiaries on the other end. That's our veterans. Committee staff visited the Debt Management Center in February and heard a couple of firsthand accounts of veterans being confused, angry, and even suicidal because they incurred a debt they didn't know about. That's what I want to avoid. I want to make sure that the VA has processes in place to protect veterans and other beneficiaries, as well as the call center employees taking their calls. So, Mr. Chairman, I know it's both of our goals that while we look for ways to make the VA better, we don't forget the veterans and the survivors and those serving them in the process. I look forward to a productive discussion, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. McGarvey. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for coming today. I'm going to introduce our witnesses. Our lead witness from the VA is Ms. Nina Tan, Executive Director of Compensation Services at Veterans Benefits Administration. Ms. Tan is joined by Mr. Kevin Friel, Executive Director of Pension and Fiduciary Services at VBA. Ms. Tan is also joined by Ms. Janine Gilson, Acting Chief Financial Officer for the VBA. Today's witness panel also includes Mr. Brent Arante, Deputy Assistant Inspector General for Audits and Evaluations at the VA Office of the Inspector General. Mr. Arante, do I understand it correctly? This won't be the last time I'm seeing you, or are they putting you out to graze? Well, if that is the case, it's been an absolute pleasure working with you over these past few years. Fair winds and following seas, my friend. That's a Navy term. Hope you understand it. I ask the witnesses on the panel to please stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God? Thank you. Let the record reflect that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Ms. Tan, you are now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your opening statement on behalf of the VA. Ms. Tan, is your mic on?
I'm sorry. Good morning, Chairman Luttrell, Ranking Member McGarvey, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss the Department of Veteran Affairs oversight of improper payments within compensation and pension programs. With me today from the Veterans Benefits Administration is Kevin Friel, Executive Director, Pension and Fiduciary Service, and Janine Gilson, Acting Chief Financial Officer. At VA, we take our mission to serve veterans, their families, and survivors very seriously. We are committed to being good stewards of taxpayer dollars, and we recognize that improper payments are problematic for all of our stakeholders. An improper payment occurs when a payment is made in the wrong amount, either too much or too little, paid to the wrong person, or paid without the required documentation. We want to assure Congress, veterans, and the American taxpayers that VA is working diligently to safeguard not only veterans and beneficiaries' financial entitlements, but also the funds appropriated to VA to carry out our sacred and honorable mission. VA is using a range of strategies to proactively address and mitigate potential improper payment issues, which I will discuss today. In fiscal year 2024, VA reduced improper payments by about $1 billion. Achieving this result was made possible by leveraging data sharing agreements with multiple federal agencies. These provide critical information that inform the propriety of payments, such as benefits related to military duty status, benefit changes due to death, and income-related information. Additionally, these partners provide information that helps identify discrepancies or confirm information. These agreements are used to establish or verify eligibility for federal benefits, verify compliance with federal benefit programs, recoup payments or delinquent funds, as well as investigate potential fraud, waste, or abuse. For example, VA made several improvements to data matching agreements for VA's income-based pension benefits. VA now uses federal tax information to verify an applicant's income upfront and income matching with the Social Security Administration to verify continued eligibility for income-based benefits. In addition to these strategies, VA continuously examines our systems and processes to improve timeliness and accuracy, thereby reducing improper payments. In December 24, VA modified its procedural guidance to liberally interpret reevaluation provisions for dependency and indemnity compensation claims. These changes streamline the decision-making process to mitigate the likelihood of underpayments and ensure VA renders the correct decision the first time. Additionally, these changes reduce requests for unnecessary information and simplify the claim review process. An area of crucial importance in making accurate payments is the correct application of effective dates by claims processors. Training and oversight through quality assurance and having proper internal controls in place are at the core of this issue. VA has taken steps to enhance training and oversight of effective dates through use of quality stand-downs, refresher training, to include a release of PACT Act training that focus heavily on effective dates, and publication of job aids based on findings from special focus review, which allow tracking and trending of errors. We also welcome the review and analysis of our Office of Inspector General partners to examine our procedures and identify areas for improvement. For example, on April 15th, OIG published a report on PACT Act effective dates. In response to the OIG's 6 recommendations, VBA is ensuring claims processors have the guidance, training, and tools they need to assign the most advantageous effective dates allowed by law for veterans' claims. VBA is also enhancing our collaboration with the Board of Veterans' Appeals and the Office of General Counsel to improve the quality, comprehensiveness, and legal accuracy of its training programs in an effort to reduce delays, avoidable errors, and rework. VBA internal controls play a key role in reduction of improper payments and include a robust quality program to monitor claim accuracy. But VA cannot reduce improper payments alone. We need help from our veterans and beneficiaries to reduce avoidable improper payments through the timely reporting of updated information. Any changes to information such as marital status, income, or dependency status must be shared with VA as quickly as possible to avoid overpayments and underpayments. For example, if a veteran and their spouse divorce and VA is not notified, this will result in an overpayment and potentially a debt that the veteran will have to pay. It is very important that veterans report any such changes to VA as quickly as possible. To better support this, VA is working to improve how it communicates the importance of reporting such changes to veterans and beneficiaries and to make reporting these changes as easy as possible. We are exploring communication avenues to ensure veterans are aware of what information we have and when they need to report a change. VA continues to make improvements on reducing improper payments and acknowledges there's more to be done. We are committed to working with Congress and our stakeholders to further improve, correct, and avoid improper payments where possible. We thank the committee for their continued support of programs that serve our nation's veterans and look forward to working with you. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my statement. My colleagues and I are prepared to respond to any questions from you and members of the subcommittee.
Thank you. The written statement of Ms. Tan will be entered into the hearing record. Mr. Ronte, you're now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your opening statement on behalf of OIG.
Chairman Luttrell, Ranking Member McGarvey, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify on the OIG's independent oversight of VBA's compensation and benefits programs. We know that these programs provide critical financial support to many veterans and other beneficiaries who rely on their monthly benefit payments. Our oversight work has identified deficiencies in VBA's processes, IT systems, training, and internal controls. As a result of that oversight, we focus on recommendations that will help VA find ways to deliver timely, accurate payments so beneficiaries are not impacted by miscalculations and incorrect payments. Taking corrective action on OIG recommendations could also help VBA be good stewards of taxpayer dollars. In addition to our audit work, the OIG has a robust criminal investigations program to combat bad actors who fraudulently receive benefits. Improper payments are defined by OMB as federal payments that are for an incorrect amount, paid to an ineligible recipient, or issued without adequate supporting documentation. For the purposes of this hearing, we are talking about underpayments and overpayments. My written statement discusses several reports that identified improper payments, but I want to focus on the importance of correctly establishing the effective date of a claim. The effective date of a claim is paramount to ensuring that veterans' compensation claim is paid on the correct date most advantageous for the veteran. The PACT Act significantly complicated effective date determinations by adding locations, dates, and new presumptive conditions that claims processors must consider. VBA rolled out the majority of training for PACT Act claims processors in December of 2022, with a completion deadline of January 2023. This was an accelerated training schedule to facilitate implementation. VBA began processing PACT Act claims for terminally ill veterans in December of 2022 and processing all other PACT Act claims in January of 2023. In a report we released last month, we found that 24% of the cases we reviewed, staff assigned incorrect effective dates that resulted in $6.8 million in improper payments, including both under and overpayments. Based on these projections, by August of 2025, that amount will reach approximately $20 million. We determined that this was the result of VBA not effectively preparing claims processors to incorporate PACT Act's significant changes. The training guidance lacked the specificity needed for complex decisions, and the two IT tools that were to assist in determining correct effective dates were unreliable. In our soon-to-be-published report on VA's compliance with the Payment Integrity Information Act, or also known as PIA, we found VBA reported improper payments, or VA reported improper payments of approximately $2.2 billion in both over and underpayment, which is down from $3.2 billion that was reported in 2023. However, of that $2.2 billion, $1.1 billion is considered a monetary loss and likely will not be recovered by VA. While VA satisfied 5 of 6 PIA requirements this year, it continued to report an improper payment rate of more than 10% for 2 programs. Those programs are VBA's pension program and VHA's purchased long-term care services. While VBA's compensation program is not included in this report, it will be next year since VA identified the compensation program as a high-priority program because it is susceptible to significant improper payments. The OIG is committed to continuing its independent oversight work of claims processing activities and VBA operations in order to create a better experience for veterans and their beneficiaries. Chairman Luttrell, Ranking Member McGarvey, and members of the subcommittee, this concludes my statement. I would be happy to address any questions you may have.
The written statement of Mr. Ronte will be entered into the hearing record. We will now move to questioning. I recognize myself for 5 minutes. Okay, that was quite the suitcase you just unpacked, sir. So Ms. Tan and this is how I'm going to start this. How do we fix this problem? Ms. Tan, you said we're exploring our avenues of communicating with our veterans because this is a pretty long cast here. So it starts inside the VA with our digital infrastructure, our training, manning, equipping with software and hardware. But as it moves downstream and touches the veterans, they have to be able to communicate back into the organization to say, hey, look, my dependents are no longer here, and I've gotten a divorce or my spouse has passed away. How do we track? You mentioned Social Security earlier. How does the VA? Because in my district, they don't have computers, they don't have phones. Our veterans like to dig in, and they're just kind of hidden. How do we track or help our veterans track? How do we track our veterans if they lose a spouse so the VA is not providing overpayment? How do we fix that problem? Because at the end of the day, and I'm going to say this now, I'm going to say it in my closing remarks, if we're spending $3 billion in overpayment and underpayment, and from the last 10 years, if we're doing our homework correctly, those numbers have increased. We're losing ground, which is money that can be spent in other areas of the VA. And I agree with my ranking member's opening statement. We have the ability to fix this, and this is a problem, yes, and when you're dealing with dollar bills, it's a big problem considering the numbers, but we have to be aggressive. Us, and the VA have to be aggressive on how to fix this. So I think it's absolutely possible in 2025. So Ms. Tan, I'll start with you.
Thank you for your question, Chairman. So we are looking at a number of avenues, but we also have a lot of things currently in place. We are making sure to notify veterans in our correspondence about when they need to report changes to us, what we have of record and how we're using that information. We also they have the ability to report to any of our public contact offices. They can make changes through va.gov as well as call our call center. So we want to make it as easy as possible for veterans to access and provide updated information as much as is necessary. We also have capabilities in which we use matching agreements. You mentioned Social Security. Some of that is for income-based benefits and entitlements. We also do death matches so that we are made aware, and we have like a survivor's assistance office now that can help veterans kind of navigate some of these situations, but really for information that only they have, if there is a divorce, if there is the death of a spouse or the need to remove or add a dependent, that's only information that veterans know that they have to come to us. And so we're trying to open all the doors and make sure that they know that they have to inform us and what information we're using at any given time.
Do we have the exact, I'm going to try to say this right, do we have the exact number of how many beneficiaries there are, how many we correspond with, and how many respond back to the VA's requests? So if we're pumping out letters, Mr. Frill, to 100 veterans that we give that are beneficiaries, and only 30 of them are responding back, but we're still paying the other 70, do you have that number by chance? Ms. Tan, I may be switching to Mr. Frill, I apologize.
No, sir, I don't have that number readily available, but we can take that back.
But is that a question that's being asked in the department?
It is. We are looking at, specifically in our area, in pension and fiduciary, we are looking at the rate of return when we do development actions or we do requests for information, the rate of return that we get.
Do you have like a projection or a window that you can provide the committee today?
No, sir, I would just be making up an arbitrary number, and I don't want to do that, but we will.
We'll get that. I ask that you get that to us, because again, just curiosity, if we're in the billions in overpayments.
And sir, if you don't mind, one thing I'd like to expand on Ms. Tan's answer is,
okay,
with the Social Security death match, originally that was just for beneficiaries. We have expanded that out to dependents on an award. So to your question about how we would find out if a spouse passed away, we will do that through the Social Security death match. Social Security has the same limitation we do, that they're dependent upon a third party to notify them of a death. But once we get it, we can start action with the veteran to remove that dependent from their award.
Okay. I just am eager to know how many beneficiaries there are, how many we send information to, and how many are responding to that request. Because the delta in there, I'd be curious to see what the number sign is and how that's correlated.
Yes, sir. And from that perspective, sir, just for clarity, we do correspond with almost all veterans every year when we do the cost of living adjustments to what Ms. Tan spoke about in the letters. We identify change, but as far as the other actions where we do development and like a due process, is that more the area that you're
That
looking
might,
at?
yeah, well, that might be where one of the misses are.
Okay.
It's causing the problem. I mean, it's a lot, there's a lot of them, but that would make this, I'm sorry, Ranking Member, you're recognized for 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here again. Ms. Tan, I'll start with you this morning. For fiscal year '24, what were the reported level of improper payments for both the compensation and pension services as real dollar numbers and as a percentage?
Thank you for the question, sir. I'm going to ask our acting chief financial officer if she'll take that question, please.
Good morning, and thank you for that question. For fiscal year 2024, for compensation overpayment debts, we established $1.14 billion in overpayment debts, and that is out of an outlay of $161.196 billion, which comes out to a fraction of 1% of improper payments. It's 0.72% of outlays were improper. The breakout for the pension service for 2024, their overpayment debts were $227.4 million out of an outlay of $3.743 billion, which is a percent of outlays of 6.1%. In total, when you add both of those numbers together, the total compensation and pension overpayment debts established was $1.366 billion out of a total compensation and pension outlay of $161.196 billion for, again, a below 1% percentage of compensation and pension outlays. It's 0.85% were improper.
Got it. And of those improper payments, what percentage were overpayments versus underpayments?
So I can do the rough math here from the agency financial report for 2024. And again, these are projections that are given to us after a statistically valid sample of 300 cases is evaluated. But from the statistically valid sample, pensions improper payments were $404 million. And the overpayments were $381.78 million. So in the magnitude of 80-ish%.
So, okay, run through that one more time for me. The pensions were?
Certainly. So improper payments as a whole, well, improper payments not including unknown payments, where we don't know whether the payment is improper or not because the payment may be going through due process. So for improper payments that actually have been identified in a projection as being improper, the total was $404 million. And the overpayments of that 404 were $381.78 million.
Okay, thank you. And do these numbers show an increase or a decrease in improper payments for these offices over prior years?
So for pension service, this is an increase. The projection is an increase from 2023 to 2024.
Taking my own notes, thank you for that. This for Ms. Tan, but whoever has the answers for it, as I understand it, compensation service will be subject to more in-depth supervision under the Payments Integrity Information Act. Can you tell us why and what changed at ComService to make that necessary?
Sure. Thank you for the question, sir. So what it is that in FY24, compensation service underwent a risk assessment, and because of the pure scale of our program, as was mentioned earlier, just the amount of outlays that we have, we are susceptible to more improper payments, and so it's not necessarily that anything wrong was done. We are in testing and evaluation right now, but that heightened awareness and risk assessment as an internal control will lead us to reporting again in 2025 after having been removed previously because we met the PIA requirements and OIG concurred with that back in April of 2021, I believe.
Okay, and we've got just a little bit of time left. Would you say this is a function of scale and not an issue of lack of proper controls, or how would you characterize it?
I think because of, as has been mentioned, just the amount of beneficiaries and veterans that we're paying and the vast dollar amounts that we're paying, we just are at heightened risk. It's a combination of factors, again, that you mentioned. I believe we have strong internal controls in place, and we're constantly working to improve those. But I think it's just based off the risk assessment, we have a higher risk because of the amount of outlays that we have.
We're out of time, so I yield back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McGarvey. Mr. Self, sir, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. These are a lot of numbers. Your last comment, though, Ms. Tan, you're at a higher risk because you have larger payments. Why is that logical?
Because of the scale of our program and the amount of beneficiaries and payments that we do make, we just have a heightened level of risk around the potential for improper payments, which could be under or over payments.
Yeah, I would disagree with that assertion. But Mr. Friel, yes or no, did you fix the Social Security Administration matching problem?
Yes, we did.
How'd you do that?
We did a testing with Social Security. We validated that we were getting good responses. We have now continued to run that match every quarter to ensure that we are capturing the debt as soon as possible.
Okay, so this is one of my continuing comments about VA. We hear a lot about your inputs, what you have done. I'm more interested in outputs, and we just heard that improper payments increased from FY23 to FY24. So when are we going to start seeing results to this fix to the problem?
So our projection right now is that the FY27 testing will get us below the 10% that's required by PIA. We are currently still doing the match, cleaning up the matches from the historical point, and we believe that we'll have a good portion, or excuse me, we'll be a good position in 2027. We're also investigating the opportunities for automation so that we can use automation to address these quicker than having to work them through the typical claims inventory.
Okay, well, I suggest we do it quickly because in the 4 years under the Biden administration, we had almost $4 billion in overpayment debts. So let's move to the Veterans Child Chapter 35 education benefits. Ms. Tan, we're talking about over $200 million for this one small sector of what we're talking about. So when did you first learn about these overpayments for the $200 million plus dollars?
Thank you, sir. We were actually notified, I believe, in compensation service around after the October 2022 date, and that's when we started to work together to look for whatever solutions we can put in place. That information or that notification actually went through our Office of Financial Management, and then they passed the information to compensation service. So I may not have those exact dates right, but the information flowed from our OFM office, from our Office of Business.
So again, those are inputs. When do we see outputs?
So actually, we have made changes so that we have a matching program through information between compensation service and education service. So we actually do a monthly match. We started that in January of 2025 to send notice, and in March of 2025, we made adjustments to those awards, creating no overpayments for our beneficiaries. In April, we have started that. We are doing that monthly match, and that allows us to give veterans or beneficiaries due process of that prohibition from them receiving both of those benefits at the same time.
Okay, Mr. Arante, you mentioned the PACT Act complexity. Can you delve into that a little bit more? Because the PACT Act has led to the largest increase in our payments to our veterans for forever. And can you go into that a little bit more to include the incorrect dates? I'd like to hear that, but there are also 6 factors I think you mentioned in your written testimony. So can you go into the complexity of the PACT Act? And my bottom line question, and I have 1 minute, is does Congress need to do something to fix the complexity?
Great question, sir. Regarding effective dates, the laws have not changed regarding effective dates. What complicated the issue with PACT Act is PACT Act added a lot of locations where veterans could serve for presumptive disabilities. They've added presumptive disabilities, and all of those issues are considered liberalizing legislation. So anytime that there is a liberalizing law, that is something that a claims processor must consider. So an example of one of the most complicated issues is if a veteran has an intent to file, meaning I'm going to file, he's going to notify VA or she's going to notify VA that I'm going to file a claim within the next year. The date of that intent to file is one effective date. Then depending on what is being claimed, there could be 2 or 3 or 4 other effective dates. It could be when the date when those disabilities, those presumptive disabilities became law. It could be when there's evidence that shows a veteran served in a specific location that was added due to liberalizing legislation. So they have to consider all of those.
Okay.
And at the speed they work, I think they missed that.
Is there any way we can clean up those? Because is there any way we can clean up those different dates?
From a legislative standpoint, we've done no work in that. I mean, our experience is this is something that the department has to fix. We've done some brainstorming, okay, if you'll bear with me, and regarding effective dates.
I think we're going to have a second round. We may come back to this, Mr. Arante.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Okay.
Mr. Arante, continue on. That was going to be my line of questioning, so please continue.
Okay, so we've, based on this recent work of effective dates, this is something that we've seen over years.
When did you tell VBA that the improper effective dates were the #1 issue?
In August of '22, I was invited to their rollout implementation conference in Houston, and we were asked to provide the IG's concerns, and our very first talking point was effective dates. And we were told that, yes, we're going to train effective dates, we know it's important, and
This is one of the major causes of this blow-up, I'm going to assume. So
yes.
how do we fix this?
So three things that me and my directors have brainstormed. I'm not advocating one or the other. It's a choice of the department. The first is they could simplify the process of scenarios that govern effective dates. Instead of having all of these different levels of rules to govern effective dates, you could say the date you filed a claim and when a law changed, right? You could simplify that. I think the pros to that, I think you'd see a better processing by VBA. The cons, I think you would get pushback from VSOs and veterans saying that, just because it's complicated, does it mean we don't do it? The second is automation. I've just created a division in the last year that looks solely at VBA's automation. I can tell you they're not there yet. And one thing that we see with automation is the more complicated the business process is, the more difficult they are having to automate. And the third is what we have recommended is more effective training and oversight. And I know that sounds like a broken record, but as we have seen, training was not effective. It makes sense to have sound training so when these issues like the PACT Act come, or new Agent Orange presumptives come, or whenever somebody decides to change what benefit we're going to give veterans, that training has to be updated, it has to be adequate, and it has to be assessed.
Training, yes, absolutely. Ms. Tan, how is the VA receiving that? And I understand there's a challenge with when the digital signature inside the VA. We didn't even have to walk down that road right now, but the VA has received the Inspector General's report. Is there any adoption plan ahead of these effective dates?
Absolutely. We've actually already implemented several of their recommendations, at least 3 of them. So we worked to update our effective date builder tool in VBMS so that.
Solve that problem?
Does it solve
The
the
PACT Act problem that we're running into?
It does assist because it addresses things like the intent to file, the liberalizing law, and the terror activity. So that was one of OIG's recommendations, which we did implement earlier this month. We are in the process of completing the job aid that they recommended, and we also referenced the outdated evaluation tool builder that was on our intranet page where all of our PACT Act resources are housed, so that it notes that that's historical, so people will not be using that. And we are looking at the evaluation of our training as OIG.
Inevitably, the VA is going to make the decision on what the effective date, and the VSOs and everyone else is going to have to go with it.
Yeah,
Kicking and screaming, there's going to have to be a decision made by the VA.
Yes, sir. And we consistently look at how do we improve or simplify our processes, as Mr. Arante mentioned, based off feedback and things of that nature. So effective dates are complex. It's hard work, and that's why we have humans in that process. If we could automate things end to end, we would. We can't. We know we need subject matter experts and human intervention in this process. There is a lot to unpack for our claims processors, but as Mr. Arante said, PACT Act didn't change how we apply effective dates. It's just new information and people applying them consistently to the most advantageous available to the veteran under the law.
Okay, Ms. Gilson, did we do, and this may be a Mr. Arante question, but did we do like a forensic audit on the amount of money spent over the past 5-10 years to make sure that we are not, again, we're trending in the wrong direction. Are we looking back on our numbers saying, hey, look, we're not making those exact same overpayment or underpayments and not replicating our mistakes? I understand the expansiveness of the VA, but as we know, we're missing something if we're spending over $1 billion in overpayments. And what is the comparative analysis that we're doing in order to fix it? And then how are we looking for 25? Are we already projected to spend more than we did in 24? I just threw a lot at you, I apologize.
No, that's fine, thank you. So a couple answers to your question here. Regarding the individualized tracking and trending of errors and how do we correct those and make them better. The Office of Financial Management does not do each's reviews on the payments that go out. So we take a review holistically at the summary level. Well, maybe that's the case. However, what we do within the Office of Financial Management is when we receive the payment information from our business lines, we are trusting, we are relying on the controls in place within that business line to make sure that payment is accurate. From the Office of Financial Management's perspective, we review the pay file to make sure that the accounting is correct, that the money is actually in the proper account to make those payments, that the time of the payment is right, that the program is correct. We are accountants, and we do not have adjudicators on the staff. If we did, we would need to reopen every single claim that came through to validate that. And
Well,
we don't.
we're $1 billion in the hole. When are we going to start taking a look at that? And I'm not beating you up. This is me talking out, okay? I mean, I don't know how far down the track it has to go before somebody says, yeah, that's probably a good idea, which I think it's past time. I'm well over. Mr. McGarvey, I apologize. You all right with that? Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that. So again, from the accounting perspective, we review to make sure that everything is appropriate and interfaces to Treasury for payment. My office also does a review of fraud, waste, and abuse types of situations. We have a tremendous partnership with our colleagues within the Office of Inspector General when we identify fraud around payments to make sure that we rectify that veteran immediately. We make them whole. In many cases, we can reissue payments same day when we get a call saying, hey, I didn't get my payment. When we identify that there's fraud within, scammers who are changing bank accounts without veterans' information or without veterans' knowledge, we do engage the Office of Inspector General to investigate those areas and identify, further action taken.
That's when you see it. I mean, then the event has already happened. We need to we're trying to stop it beforehand.
Correct. And so we do have some tools and techniques that we have available where we are getting more proactively involved in preventing fraud. we're using machine learning and artificial intelligence and detailed analytics to get to.
This is where the department needs to come to Congress and say, we have to have the money to implement this type of software, this artificial intelligence, machine learning. You have to tell us that. Because right now, we're just seeing the numbers, and they're not, obviously, they're not good, but we're all in to help you. And again, this problem's been going on for, I mean, I'm going to make the assumption for decades, and let's fix it. Right here, we're ready, okay? I'm well over, Mr. McGarvey, okay. Go ahead, finish.
I think I'm pretty much
Okay,
done.
all right, so Mr. McGarvey, I'm sorry, sir, we recognize you.
Thank you.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate this conversation because we want to get this right? We want to make sure that we are getting the money to our veterans that they need, that they deserve, and that we are being good stewards of taxpayer money. In my round of questioning, I will refresh everyone's memory because it was a second ago. I was talking with Ms. Tan about whether this was a function of scale, not an issue of lack of proper controls. And she sort of said more it's a function of scale. And I just wanted a second opinion on that. Mr. Arante, do you agree with that assessment?
To some degree, sir, I do. It is a matter of scale. So if you look at the PIA thresholds, those PIA thresholds are across the government. Every agency has those same thresholds. So if you're conducting a risk assessment of the National Science Foundation and their budget is like this, they mess one thing up and it's high risk. DOD, HHS, VA, their budget is like this. So they get this much more leeway to make mistakes or have acceptable mistakes. That's why I am a firm believer that as it relates to compensation, compensation has been on and off the PIA program throughout the years. But as the chairman indicated in his opening statements, we have a body of work that shows constantly that there are improper payments. And in the last 9 reports I've issued, 7 show incorrect effective dates that lead to improper payments. I think that's enough where compensation should be, I think they should make an exception. I think compensation should be on their high priority list until the numbers come down. And the reason I say that, because if you look at some of the programs that are tested in the PIA, communications, utilities, and rent, those improper payments have dropped to 0.5%. Medical care contracts have dropped over 2%. VA community care has dropped from 5% to 1%. That tells me the process works, but you got to keep those programs on whether they meet the threshold or not, just because it is a form of function. There's just so much disparity in the budget that allows more mistakes with bigger organizations.
And Mr. Arante, is there anything that is stopping the VA from complying with PIA?
No.
Okay, voluntarily complying, I should say.
No. And that's what our work is. I have mixed emotions about the effectiveness of PIA. The good thing about PIA is it's our oversight of the department, and it's compliance, and we test to make sure that the department is following the rules. It's a strictly compliance audit. It doesn't get very deep, but they are following the rules.
And the chairman said something that I echo and find interesting when talking with Ms. Gilson about tell us what you need, right? Tell us what you need so we can help fix this problem. And we heard some suggestions from her potentially, just from a different point of view. Mr. Arante, do you have any suggestions for what Congress can do to help make the situation better?
In regards to PIA, other than the recommendations that we make, I have no other guidance or suggestions. Like I said, our review is strictly compliance. It doesn't dig in deep, doesn't look for what we would typically do in a normal audit. We don't look for the root cause. We just look at compliance as mandated by OMB.
Ms. Tan, in a June 2024 report, the OIG found that VBA had not identified Vietnam veterans who were eligible for benefits, and that resulted in an underpayment of $836.8 million. Another 2024 review looking at survivors showed $33.1 million in underpayments. Both of those reports have open actions, including a full review of claims, better outreach letters, and monetary compensation. Do you know where those reviews stand at this time?
Sir, for the one that you mentioned regarding survivors' payments, I'll ask Mr. Friel to respond to that one. Can you repeat the first one that you mentioned? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Sure. We were talking about the 2024 OIG report that Vietnam veterans who were eligible for benefits had not received them in payments of $836.8 million. And another looking at survivors in 2024 showed $33.1 million underpayments. Both of those reports have open actions, including a full review of claims, better outreach letter, monetary compensation. We're just seeing where those reviews stand right now and getting the veterans what they've earned.
Certainly, I will take back, if I can, that question about the Vietnam veterans report to see where those action items are, and I'll ask Mr. Friel if he has an update on the survivors.
Yes, sir, thank you for that question. So as it relates to the survivors piece, we have adjusted our processes. One of the things that the IG called out was in the PAC Act required that survivors specifically asked for us to look back, right, to see if there was an earlier effective date. And so that was our initial training in concurrence with or coordination with the IG and OGC. We have amended our processes now to say that a reopened DIC is in fact a claim for us to look back. So that will help close that gap. We are continuing to work. I think we have under 20 claims left to make the proper adjudication and adjust the rates to ensure the survivors get the right amount.
Thank you, Mr. Friel. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've heard a lot of Washington speak here today. Does anybody know what those ribbons up on the flags are?
Campaign ribbons?
They're battle streamers. Veterans that we are talking about, those represent the campaigns that our veterans fought in, were wounded in, died in. That's the veterans we're talking about here. I've heard a lot of Washington talk. Ms. Tan, in your testimony, written testimony, it talks about how critical it is that veterans and beneficiaries self-report changes. Now, I agree with that, but what I've heard here is we haven't fixed the problems so that our veterans have the education and the training to know when they are supposed to do things. And you heard the chairman say that in his district, some people don't have computers. So we've heard this time and time and time again from my time on this committee. Our veterans don't know, and we've made it so complex. Mr. Arante's testimony, we've made it so complex for our veterans. Those battle streamers up there represent the veterans that we're talking about here in Washington speak. Ms. Tan, how many OIG, and two separate answers here, how many OIG recommendations do you have outstanding, and how many GAO recommendations does the department have outstanding, OIG and GAO? And these are recommendations of people that are telling the department things to improve your processes. How many do you have open?
Sir, I don't have the total number of all of those pending.
I would like to know, because we have got to do better. I mean, inputs are not outputs. I want to start hearing outputs about how we fix the problems. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mrs. Tan, during the last administration, VA informed us of plans to rely on the authority in Cleland Dole to cancel overpayments of VA benefits resulting from administrative delay. When will VA begin using this authority?
Thank you for the question, ma'am. We are still in the process of implementing Cleveland Dole Section 252. We have implemented one of the sections, but we're still working on implementing the one that will require us to create permanent timeliness standards around which to prohibit the overpayment or debt applied to individuals because of delays in VA processing.
Ms. Tan, yes or no? Was the April 2025 PACT Act effective date refresher training, was it mandatory?
Yes, it was.
Yes or no, have all compensation service employees completed that April 2025 effective date training?
I would have to get back to you on that.
Please do, thank you. Mr. Friel, yes or no, has every employee who decides survivors' DIC claims also completed that April 2025 training?
Yes, they have.
And Ms. Tan, what exact processes for assigning correct effective dates is VA planning to automate, and when will that automation technology be implemented?
I am not aware of plans to automate effective dates just because of the complexity around it. I will speak to the work that we've done to update and enhance our system so that the tools that are available to claims processors address some of those problem areas and pain points that Mr. Arante mentioned, such as intent to file, liberalizing law, and toxic exposure activities.
And Mr. Friel, does VA have the authorities, including all the computer matching agreements that VA requires to ensure accurate payment of veterans' pension and survivors' pension?
Yes, we do.
Now, Mr. Arante, what mistakes did the Biden administration VA make when initially rolling out training and guidance for PACT Act claims effective dates?
Ma'am, based on our work, and as I indicated in my opening remarks, is the training was pushed out very quickly. They had 4 months to identify the type of training that needed to be done. They trained in December. It was very quick, and what our recent report shows is they missed an opportunity. They did not evaluate the effectiveness of that training, but I can tell you my reports are showing that the training could not have been that effective because we're seeing high error rates with effective dates.
And sir, has VA done enough to fix those mistakes so that compensation overpayments will be significantly reduced in the future?
Ma'am, if you're looking for a yes or no, I'm going to say no, just because of my body of work. However, as the VBA panel members have indicated, I think they're heading in the right direction. They are correcting these effective date tool builders. They are consolidating their policies and procedures and the guidance so staff don't have to look through 10 pages of FAQs on this site and 20 pages of FAQs on this site. I think they're working towards the right direction.
So, Mr. Arante, do you believe that VA's quality assurance controls are adequate to ensure that VA claims processors assign correct effective dates for award of benefits?
No, ma'am. And the reason I say that, again, I'm basing it on our work. We see high error rates all the time. I think one of the things that we would like to see, and we looked at their QA programs in 2021. We looked at 5 aspects of it, issued reports on them. And since then, I think one thing that we would like to see with their QA is when they draw samples to determine accuracy and error rates, they sample across the board, the entire spectrum of claims. It could be a musculoskeletal claim, it could be a claim to a presumptive claim, it could be a whatever, right? But they know what their high priority areas are. They know effective dates is one. There's several others. I would like to see them, aside from a special focused review, because that's a one-time look, I would like to see them conduct a specific sample of those high-risk areas. Now, that might not bode well for their accuracy rate, but it will help them hone in on what the high-risk problems are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yield back.
Mr. Ragland, do you have any more questions? We moved through the second panel. Do you have another question, or are you good?
Not at this point, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I yield to the ranking member for closing remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the testimony here today. Obviously, we appreciate you all being here, and I know that each and every one of us wants to improve these programs. We want to make sure that we get it right for the veterans and we get it right for the taxpayers. We've got to do it in a holistic way. We've got to make sure that there are the fewest possible errors and that the personnel are well-trained. We also want to see this done with care and compassion. I want us to find solutions. I want us to create efficient processes and to listen to the workers and union workers when they tell us how we can help them in their work. I want the call center workers at the Debt Management Center to have the ability to step back and breathe when a veteran calls in crisis because they don't see a way out of debt they didn't even know they had. I want the veteran in crisis to have access to immediate mental health care at that moment. I want to see a VA that provides kindness and clarity in a payment program to help a veteran get out of the red. But I don't want to hack away at the base. I don't want to needlessly attack people who are serving these folks while we make it harder to conduct research or provide life-saving care and keep families together in burial plots. We want to make sure that the VA is working, that it's working for the people for whom it is intended to serve, the veterans, that they do so in a responsible way that has the fewest possible errors. And I truly mean that, all errors, whether it's identifying the proper payments, the proper training, whether it's an improper use of funds. Because at the end of the day, if we don't get this right, who are we hurting? We're hurting our veterans. We're hurting the people who work at the VA, many of whom have served our country prior to their serving our country at the VA. We hurt the families, the caregivers, and the survivors of the brave men and women who put on a uniform to serve us. Mr. Chairman, I look forward to working with you together on this issue, to finding genuine solutions to these problems, and I yield back.
Thank you, sir. And thank you all for coming to the hearing today. The ranking member and I are in agreement. It would be ideal if we could walk this problem all the way down to zero, $-wise. The system itself is so large. There's going to be a margin of error in there somewhere. Our heartache is the fact that it's trending in the wrong direction. And to his point, we are serving the veterans. The veterans are always on the receiving end of everything that we do in this committee and everything that you wake up every morning, look yourself in the mirror, walk into the office and say, why am I here? It's for our veterans. Taking what Mr. Arante said, implementing those effects inside the VA will move us in the proper direction. Ms. Tan, you said you are implementing certain things that the OIG has pushed out. Amazing. Ms. Gilson, when you reported the numbers, I just don't like the fact that we're going in the wrong direction, and there has to be a fix. I'd like to meet with you in the antechamber. I have a couple of questions I'd like to ask you after the hearing. Making overpayments at this number, I think one of the worst things you can do, I'm being dead 100% serious, the worst thing you can do is overpay a veteran and tell him you got to give it back. That's something that the United States government is exceptional at. I know I get hit by the IRS all the time. Hey man, you owe us 25 cents. Our veterans live paycheck to paycheck, and a lot of them are in a deep, dark black hole. And if you're trying to take something from them that the United States government gave to them, that's our fault. Okay, and we have to fix that problem. So whether or not it's hardware, software, man, train and equip, we have to be on. And I know, again, every time you guys sit in front of us, you're telling us that, hey, that's happening inside the VA. I got it. And once again, we are a large organization, and at scale, one of the largest. Okay, but I'll always say, remember, it is about our veterans, 100%. We have to take care of those that took care of us. Okay. So thank you for coming and testifying before us today on the important goal of reducing waste resulting from improper payments and compensations and pensions. I look forward to working with the administration and my colleagues that causes the improper payments to ease the burden on our veterans and their families. I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material without objection. So ordered. This hearing is adjourned.